the bank 295 million, and it's micro and a bunch of Gates's buddies are paying the 395 million.
The fact is,
And
everything is known. It's just not public.
right. So they're all being listed as a consortium or something like that, or as a trust, so that the names are all being withheld. But how are we having these vast amounts of money being paid to victims, but we don't have anybody being arrested for the crimes in which they're settling for?
Well, basically, they've kept everything outside of any knowledge of the public because, obviously, as we've all been very aware, they're very sensitive people. It's very much like what we're seeing now in Vermont, the the Boston brothel that has connections in Virginia. There's a bunch of elected officials that are connected to this.
Well, let's get into that after we do the intros, because we got intros to do.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us on this week's edition of the Liberty First Foundation Weekly Roundtable. I'm one of your co-hosts, Frank Cheech Johnson. To my right on the screen is Michael Vasquez, Dragon of the Southern Tier. He is the Fire of the Bronx, and this is Puppy. And we have, of course, our resident lesbian, Jan Reeves. Reeves is coming to say hello. And, of course, Michael Marshall, my partner and co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. We were talking off air. That's why we were rambling before we did the intros. We got a pretty big week of news that we were talking about. And we were talking just before we came on air, as today was the day that finally somebody on Capitol Hill decided that they were going to file for a subpoena for the flight logs for the Lolita Express for Epstein Island. Yeah. And it just happened to be the same day that two lawsuits were approved by judges, one in the amount of $395 million being paid to the victims of Epstein Island on behalf of a trust set up for friends of Bill Gates and Microsoft, and one from Citibank for $290 million being set up to pay the victims because of I guess they must have helped facilitate the trafficking in some capacity, or financing it, or whatever the case is. And we just find it really odd that we have now $600 million changing hands, and we still don't have the single name of a perpetrator other than Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine, however you say her name. Ghislaine Maxwell. She's rotting in some prison right now, complaining about her food. That's what she's complaining about.
Prisons aren't known for their cuisine. But then again, they're not supposed to be vacation spots, and I'm sure she's eating better than I would want her to eat if it were up to me. But I'm known as a harsh in my desire for punishment for people who are put into prison. But that being said, what we're looking at with this case is exactly the same thing that we're seeing coming out of Boston, which just came out yesterday. The news came out, 2 days ago, where we know there was a Boston brothel, a network that reached all the way from Boston to Virginia. Elected officials all the way around were deeply involved in this business. Several businesses and business owners were deeply involved in this. This was entrenched. It was well known. It was kept hush hush. And now it came out. And I am almost absolutely sure that each and every one of the politicians that will be named is somebody who did the same thing that Eric Adams has done in New York. They were talking about something that was taboo. They were pushing a message that was unapproved. It doesn't matter if it's left or right. I don't care. You'll see that these were individuals who didn't follow the party line, the approved messaging in social or mainstream media. And so they're being punished, and all of their buddies, all of their friends that are connected to them, they're cleaning out those cobwebs. But just like the Moreland Commission with Andrew Cuomo, the moment it gets to anyone sensitive, that is still protected, anyone who's still following the party line, the approved messaging for the mainstream media, then it'll end. Not that there's not more corruption to find. They're just going to be done because they got the people they wanted to get, not all the people that were involved.
Well, speaking of Eric Adams,
yeah,
the FBI seized his phones.
Yeah.
So he is definitely being targeted.
Yeah, but again, let's look at why are they after him now? They're saying, oh, well, this is about his, they're after his finances. Everybody knew about the finances for years now. This isn't new. This isn't a surprise. They had access to this for years. The allegations have been out for a long time. They're after Eric Adams because he dared to talk about illegal immigration, that it's a problem in a sanctuary city. And he said this as we're approaching the 2024 fortification of the election. It's interfering with votes for Biden. And therefore, they told him to shut up. He didn't. You got that from Hochul. You got that from the House of Representatives and then from the White House. He didn't. He kept talking about it. And so, wow, suddenly there's an FBI investigation and this is going to shut him up. He's an example.
Yeah, into his 2021 campaign.
Yeah. If the FBI was going to be asking questions about any of the financing that takes place in New York City, why have they not investigated anything about the $1 billion that was missing from the previous administration that was put in the hands of the mayor's wife for her programs? That money, $980 million, disappeared. Nobody's getting anything of it. If they care.
I saw an article right before we came on that said that out of the 140,000 illegal immigrants in New York, less than 2% of them have even tried to look for a job.
Why would they? They're being put up in hotels, 4-star hotels. The city is spending $60,000 per illegal, not per family, per illegal alien. They are living the life of Riley, and they're inviting everyone they know to come and enjoy that same. This is I don't even know what the word would be. This is the giveaway of a lifetime. They're having the time of their lives. Of course, they're not going to go for a job. Why would you?
But yet we keep getting told that immigration is what helps this country.
Yeah, well, again, remember all those lies you've been told for decades that say, oh, but illegal immigration is a benefit. It has a net positive. It helps the economy. It brings money in. Well, if that's the case, then why is New York City looking at $12 billion? That's billion with a B. $12 billion. And that's for the illegals we got already.
Well,
and they're still coming.
I think the other thing that people don't realize, and it was something that was talked about a lot when I was coming up in California, is how much money illegals send back home. How much any immigrant sends back to their own country, to their families.
50 to 80%.
The money here.
No, the money's going out of the system. So it's a complete drain from beginning to end. This is money. They can't work. Well, first of all, it's not just that they aren't working. They can't. It is a crime. It is a federal crime for them to work, even though New York State is trying to say, well, we'll give excuses. And Biden says, well, these illegals can work for a little bit of time. The fact is, it's a crime. The first crime is entering America without permission. The second crime is if they go to work, well, they're illegally working. And normally when they do go to work, they're doing so by using fraudulent Social Security numbers, which is an identity theft, another crime. So, I mean, this is a series of crimes, or they just live off of the dole of the government, which means they're living off of taxpayers. The average person in New York makes the average person in America makes about $35,000 a year. They're spending basically double what the average American makes in a year on people who have consistently broken the law. And no one has an answer about why we should be doing this. Why? And they're asking for more of them to come in. They're like, no, but we're still a sanctuary state. We're still a sanctuary city. Let them keep coming. There is no such thing as a border.
And as you brought up last week, now they're giving them a Bill of Rights.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. Look, they're criminals. Get out of our country. People tell me all the time, "Oh, Mike, that's so racist." How's it racist? I didn't say anyone's color of skin. Oh, Mike, you're an ism because of, I don't know, religion or sex. I didn't mention any of those things. You're a criminal for entering America without authorization. That is a crime. You're avoiding prosecution of the law. That is a crime. If you're working, you're doing so fraudulently. That is a crime. I want them punished. The first thing is get out of our country.
Well, I don't know how we could expect to punish any of the people that are coming here illegally when we have a federal government that blatantly, in your face, escorts these people across the border illegally, that tears down any barriers that we have, that sues states for trying to enforce any sort of border action, that pays other countries to ship people up here, that broadcasts radio and TV ads in foreign countries telling them what places to cross the border into, how to apply for welfare benefits, how to apply for Obamacare and everything else. We have our own government blatantly breaking the law at the direction of the President of the United States, his Homeland Security, his Interior Department, all being directed at breaking the law. And we're going to sit there and wonder why we're not throwing these people out.
No, it's even more money.
We're focusing a lot of our anger on the wrong thing because, listen, I don't want to minimize anybody's struggle. I know that there's people around the world who would give anything they have to live the life of the poorest American.
Not my problem.
Still, no, it's not my problem either. But I can understand the desire for somebody wanting that. I don't have a problem with somebody wanting that. I have a problem for somebody breaking the rules in order to obtain it when other people follow the rules to obtain it. But I have more anger towards a government that not only allows it to happen, but to promote it to happen just for the specific purpose of trying to pad the voter rolls to gain more power, to usurp the American Constitution and the American people. That's where my anger is. My anger is aiming at the people who are using the system specifically to destroy the country. Because eventually, when they get enough of this country destroyed, you're not going to have a lot of people wanting to come here when the American dream is dead, gone, and buried.
Well, see, that's why it's twofold. First is we have to, one, stem the bleeding, the flow, the inflow. These illegal aliens, which there are now, the latest number I've heard coming from Congress, from the Department of Homeland Security, is there are 169 illegal, known or suspected terrorists that have entered the United States because of these open borders. 169. The last time we were talking about this, I quoted this number. It came in the summer, and in June or July, I was mentioning it. It was 140. The number keeps growing. These are dangerous. These are the ones we know of. And if we're catching, and it's usually they estimate somewhere between 1 in 3 or 1 in 5 of the illegal aliens that enter. That means there's potentially 3 times more illegal terrorists in America that we don't know about. These are potential 9/11s, each and every one of them. These are potential Colorado Boulder shooters. These are the same kind of people we see at San Bernardino doing the mass shootings, the people in Orlando doing the shootings. This is dangerous. This is a national security threat. So it is absolutely important. We need to get rid of these people because, people say, well, that's heartless. It's not my issue. Get out, go through the proper process, then come in, and I'll be fine with it, which includes when you go through asylum, that means you wait 18 months as you are vetted so that we know who you are and know that you're not some criminal, not some psychotic, not someone who abuses people, and you're allowed into the country. So there's a whole process there. So that's one part of it, just to protect the nation. And then there's the other part of it, which is, okay, and the politicians who are supporting this, who are saying everything's open, it's all free for everyone except American citizens, we got to vote them out of office. These people are out of their minds.
Well,
Yeah.
and they're not coming here to be part of America. They come here and they make their own communities, and then they wave their flags. They want all of their traditions to be upheld. Forget our traditions. They want to change it all to theirs.
Well, they're not coming to be Americans. They're
That's
coming
what
to
I'm
live
saying.
in
They're
America.
not coming here to live our. When you come to America, you say that you're going to live our beliefs.
What say you, Mr. Marshall? You're uncharacteristically quiet.
Well, thing is right now, and you guys know how I feel constitutionally about immigration, but the fact remains that right now the federal government is charged with securing our southern border. And from a common defense standpoint, that is one of the roles of government, is to ensure the security of our nation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they are failing miserably at that.
Agreed.
Quite frankly. Okay. They've lost control over pretty much all of it. And the thing is during Trump administration, while it wasn't great, illegal border crossings were declining.
Mm-hmm.
And various testimonies I've heard from multiple Border Patrol officials have all said that under the Biden administration, their hands are pretty much tied, that they have a hard time interdicting on these illegal crossings.
Yeah.
So we have one group of people, i.e. Democrats, that are trying to say that Biden's got the southern border under control, but every fact, every statistic, every testimony by people actually with boots on the ground show a completely different story.
Well, I'd push back on that. The Democrats aren't saying Biden has it under control. They're saying we don't want to talk about this. And the progressives are saying borders don't exist anyway. So you've got the progressive wing, who are the loudest voices, screaming and shouting, and they're coming from the colleges. The same colleges that are teaching anti-Semitism are the ones that are saying there is no such thing as a border. So you've got that crowd, and the mainstream or the mainline elected Democrats are saying, we don't need to talk about that right now. We have other issues to talk about because don't you know, it's the climate. Climate change is the greatest threat to America. We have to talk about the climate. Don't tell me about the actual current threat, the threat of all these terrorists that are entering America. Don't talk about the threat to our finances, our infrastructure, the fact that we have people who are being kicked out into the streets to facilitate these illegal aliens. Moms and children are on the streets, homeless people, people who have mental illness, and we're throwing them to the sidelines, our own citizens, to take care of this. They're saying, no, that's not important. Climate change is important. So let's focus on that. And that's what they're saying. And really, that's kind of sickening when you think about it.
But it's also the typical Democrat playbook. Believe what we tell you, not what you see.
Yeah. Don't pay attention to the details. Forget about the impact. Well, again, it goes back to what did we knew this was coming. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on 60 Minutes stood in front of the nation and told us what the future from the Democratic Party, the Democratic Socialists of America, Antifa, the progressive leaders of tomorrow. What is it? All of these far left organizations, the Democratic Party, they said, and she told us, what is the answer? It doesn't matter if it's empirically, if it is mathematically, if it is in any form true. She doesn't care about the truth. She doesn't care about empirical data or facts. It's all about feelings. And she's focused on feelings.
As long as it's emotionally true.
Yeah. And this is what she said on 60 Minutes to the nation. And what have we seen coming out of the politics from the left? Oh, feel. Every time they're talking, feel. We feel this is important. We feel this is a threat. We feel like this is what the future is about. We feel bad if we don't do this. We must take care of these people because we feel like we have an obligation. Feel.
Makes me feel like putting on a white pantsuit and crying in front of a chain link fence.
Yeah,
but all right, now, Marshall, you're saying constitutionally speaking, the federal government has a duty and a responsibility. It's their charge. It's their order to provide for the common defense
of the nation.
Yeah.
So being that they have that, and the first part of defending the nation is, I would say, would be defending a border, because if you don't have a border, you don't have a nation.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have some sort of periphery there, something that denotes where your nation begins and where it ends. Do you see this as dereliction, or do you see this as on purpose or incompetence? How do you see, being that this is 2 days away from the Marine Corps birthday, to which both of you gentlemen so honorably served and took that oath? You guys took that oath to serve this nation and to protect and uphold.
As does every elected official also.
As does every one of them. Do you think that what they've done to the southern border is just dereliction of duty, or do you think it's a purposeful act of them doing this? And if so, for what purpose?
I actually kind of lean towards that it is a purposeful act. And why I think it is a purposeful act is because of the countless testimonies that multiple agents from Border Patrol have put out there. Okay. And basically saying, where they've said that they are pretty much not allowed to interdict on these crossings.
That's
now,
yeah.
Here's something that we need to be thinking about. If the number of illegal immigrants in this country, okay, illegal aliens, illegal immigrants, whatever you want to call them, rises to a certain threshold, that really starts putting a huge burden on our economy. Okay, and we already have a burden on our economy due to certain policies set by the current administration. If enough illegals are put in, then it's real easy to point the finger at the collapse of the economy towards the support that has to be provided for these illegal aliens and the resources that are required to actually find and deport these illegal aliens.
Well,
now, I was watching a hearing, and mind you, I didn't watch the entirety of the hearing, but Mayorkas was being grilled by Senator Kennedy
yeah,
about the policy on the southern border.
Mm-hmm.
And Senator Kennedy literally asked him what was the meaning of third party policy. And essentially, Mayorkas tried to skirt around the question and everything else instead of directly saying that third party policies, which are in place in a vast majority of the world,
It's a UN directive.
okay, is where somebody seeking asylum for political persecution and refugee status and so forth must declare their asylum in the first country they come to,
For safe country.
or first safe country.
Mhm.
Okay, not first country, but first safe country, which would mean that a majority of refugees and politically persecuted people coming from the Middle East via Mexico should be claiming asylum in Mexico.
Well,
People fleeing from Venezuela should be claiming asylum in Mexico.
essentially, you can point to anywhere in the world you want, but there's only two nations that should be directly having access to the United States based on the refugee and the first safe nation. That would be Canada and that would be Mexico. And there's no one else on the North America besides north of Canada, and they don't have a problem. And Mexico, you could make the argument kind of for Mexicans, but if you're from anywhere else, Central America, South America, that excuse doesn't work. You wind up in Belize, you wind up in Mexico, you wind up in a dozen different countries before you can get to the United States. Same thing if you're in Africa. If you're in Angola, which is one of the larger, one of the nations where we get more people from right now, there's no way in hell you can say America's the first stop. Middle East, no way they can say that America's the first stop. There's almost no nation that can say that. And they'd like to obscure this. It is a UN directive, and they like to obscure this and say, well, borders don't matter. Yeah, they do. They matter a lot.
No, of course they do. Okay. Aren't we supporting a particular country in defense of its border from Russia?
That would be Ukraine, yeah, and same thing with one of the reasons why we're fighting in Syria, reasons why we're fighting and protecting the Kurds. There's a lot of wars in the world because of borders, because they exist. Hell, Gaza, border. There you go.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the word, when they're talking about if you're going to seek asylum, you have to stop and seek it in the first safe country you come to. But who's defining what safe is, and by what definition is the person going to determine is it safe? Is it the asylum seeker to determine that country is safe? What is the definition? Because I don't feel safe in Mexico. I wouldn't feel safe in Chile. I wouldn't feel safe in Argentina. I wouldn't feel. Well, where exactly is safe?
Okay, it's not safe as in you won't be criminally accosted or something along those lines.
Oh, no,
it's safe from the political persecution that you are fleeing from.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I want to know exactly what their definition of safe is and how subjective is it, because anybody who's coming across can say, well, if that's the new definition, if the definition is I have to feel safe where I apply for my asylum, Of course, nobody's going to feel safe until they're at the Waldorf Astoria or in a suite, sitting in a hot tub with the butler bringing them a bottle of champagne. Feel
Well,
pretty safe then. It's just that
generally,
another ambiguous term that they'll use in order to leave a door open for interpretation rather than, than solidify it. Now, Vess, you said before, how many 149 known terrorists are now freely running around in our country that we know about?
169.
169. They
100
know these people cross the border.
Yes.
They know they crossed the border. So at some point, these people were in the custody or at least apprehension or at least the presence of Border Patrol agents that could make a positive identification on these
Yes.
people.
And as far as we've been able to determine, there is nothing that clearly states that these known or suspected terrorists have been detained and or ejected from the United States. It
Okay.
is believed that they may be walking around right now for the next 3 years with a summons to show up in a courtroom.
All right, but here's the thing that gets me about that is they're saying, okay, they're on a list.
Yeah.
You're on the list, buddy. You're on the
Mhm.
list. Here you are, right on that clipboard, that noteboard. But we can't take action against you. We have
No.
to leave you on your good behavior on this promissory note that you're going to show back up there. They can't take action against this person. They can't. They seemingly.
They
Otherwise,
could. They aren't.
they aren't. I was going to say, what action can be taken?
They would be detained and they would be ejected from the nation. They're not allowed. By definition, being on the terrorist watch list is a credible reason across the world not to allow someone to enter your nation. Just being on the list, you are detained and sent back.
Well, because I'm saying, if I wound up by some stretch of the imagination winding up on the no-fly list because my name happened to match the name of somebody who did something bad, and they put me on the no-fly list, they might not be able to come and arrest me if I want to get on the airplane, but they do have something they can act upon, which is to prevent me from getting on that air. They can take some action against me by removing me from a plane, removing me from an airport, detaining me for a period of time. They can, interfere with my free ability to travel, which is my constitutional right to be able to move freely throughout my nation. They can take action against me, an American citizen, if I wound up on the no-fly list. But you have 169 people that are known to at least have some sort of terroristic,
serious terrorist threat.
They're a serious threat, whether by action or association, and nobody thinks, hey, maybe these guys need to be held.
According to the policy,
immediately go to the judge. There's not, no, we're not going to let you make up your mind. We're going to hold you. You can go in front of the judge. Because now you've already committed a crime that we know about, crossing the border illegally.
To be fair, there is no answer in the mainstream media or any of the sources on whether these people have been detained, have been ejected from the nation, or are in the nation. In every direct questioning about this, Secretary Mayorkas has failed to reveal what is the status of these individuals.
Well,
he has repeatedly, when directly asked, has said he has to look into it. He doesn't know what their status is.
Also take into consideration the reason why I say, how do we parse the word safe? Because it can be interpreted 1,000 different ways.
I'm actually looking at the...
Well, hold on. Just when you talk about, we don't know if these persons have been ejected from the government. You'll hear the government come out and say deported. But deported doesn't mean put out. Deported just means that a judge somewhere signed a piece of paper saying that this person needs to be deported. Once that judicial decision has been made, the person has been considered deported, even though they're physically still in the country. So if you hear the government come out and talk about how many we've successfully deported X amount of people, it doesn't mean at all that they have actually been ejected from the country or that they haven't returned. It's just that they've been signed and met that qualification that said you are now a deportee. And I know this because I've actually had to escort people being deported out of the country.
Well, here's one thing, okay, and that's what happened with the Cuban invasion in Florida. Cuba basically released all the prisoners out of their prisons and put them on rafts and sent them to Florida.
Yeah.
Saying they were all deported. And when they got here, they claimed asylum.
Yeah, they released their mental institutions as well as the criminals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was that was pretty famous.
Sanitarium.
Yeah, that's how they cleared it out.
No, I didn't tell you sanitarium. I said sanitation. If anybody remembers the Al Pacino movie, got him.
Yeah, but
nobody's ever seen
this is something we could expect. I mean, again, we have seen repeatedly that when directly questioned about this, Secretary Mayorkas, he knows these numbers. His staff know the numbers. He has been asked these questions repeatedly. And we know that this is a problem because we're seeing it in Chicago. We're seeing it in New York City. We're seeing it in California. We're seeing it in Arizona and in Texas. They know what the threat is. They know how big the problem is. And the reason why I believe, this is my speculation, they don't want to give us any firm numbers. They don't want to tell us what actions aren't being taken because they know that this will once people know that the border's wide open, Kamala Harris has not done her job as the immigrations are, the Biden administration have no plan other than to just open the doors and let everyone in, that it will negatively impact the 2024 election. And this is why they want to distract, they want to obfuscate, and for everyone who is talking about this, everyone, especially in the Democratic Party, they're punishing them. Where you get, and this is why we get people like Eric Adams, who is an example. He's being held up as an example. And okay, what are they doing to him? The FBI is now investigating him for his finances, something that no one cared about for years. We see that Senator Manchin, is now getting kicked. He says he's going to not seek re-election. He didn't have a choice. The Democrats told him they weren't going to continue to fund him and that they were going to put someone up to challenge him because he didn't vote the way they wanted.
Oh, he's
talking too much.
He always votes the way they wanted them to vote. He was
not always. No,
he's still got a 98% voting record with them. He's a shill. The guy,
yeah, but no. Here's the thing: you're missing. He didn't vote. You can be 98%. That's not enough. You have to be 100%. You have to be Kirsten Gillibrand. You have to be straight down the line Democrat. Say yes to everything in the party, or else.
I think part of the reason he's stepping down too, though, is he's going to announce
to go independent.
That's the feeling here in West Virginia. That's what
a lot of people are saying he's going to go independent, like RFK. The Democrats are having massive. I mean, it was just a little while ago. Mayor Eric Johnson out of Dallas just abandoned the Democratic Party for the same reasons we're talking about right now. We've seen State Representative Maynor out of Georgia left the Democratic Party for the same reason. We've been seeing a slew of these. They're just not national news. You have to be looking locally to see all the Democrats that are leaving for the exact same reasons why Manchin's being kicked out and why Eric Adams is under trouble, because they didn't just go straight down the line and parrot the Democratic Party, which should terrify people, which should really terrify people.
Well, then I'm waiting for them to, to do the same with cinema that they have with Manchin.
Guaranteed. Well,
because she's been a bigger thorn in their side than he has, except she's just not smart enough to play the financial game as well as Manchin does. Manchin kept this whole he's a blue dog, he's a conservative Democrat, he's a common sense Democrat, he's just in it, and it would always say, oh well, it's a split this way, and it can come down to Manchin. And then what did Manchin do? He reaped a reward from both parties, waiting for political donations to come in before he sided with the Democrats anyway. He was never a risky vote. He was never. Republicans annoyed the hell out of me. They kept trying to put faith in this guy, like he was going to be their shining knight. The guy was a shill. The guy's been a shill.
The saddest part is the person that looks like it's going to take his place here in West Virginia is going to be no better.
Of course
probably
not.
Worse.
It's going to be better. It's just going to be a trade-off. But when you get a guy who launches his political career, do you remember his first ad? Joe Manchin's first ad? When I get to Washington, I'm going to put the bullet in Obamacare. And he had a thing. He had the Obamacare booklet on a friggin' fence post, and he's standing there with his Weatherby 300 Magnum bolt-action rifle. And he's all cowboyed up, and he puts a round through the Obamacare legislation. And then what did he do? He got there and he voted for it.
Of course he did.
And
well, then let's continue to talk about the elections. What about the elections that just happened Tuesday, and they had to shut down a whole bunch of machines in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania because they were switching votes?
Well, apparently.
Virginia flipped to a Democratic Congress because the RNC chair refused to let the GOP have any contributions.
We've been seeing many cases where this is what I call part of the fortification of elections. This is exactly what we were told by Newsweek for all the censors on YouTube and in Google. This is verified. This is the information coming out of Newsweek and their investigative report about the shadow cabal made up of news media, social media, tech giants, and elected officials to fortify elections. We saw that in 2020. We saw it in 2022, and we are seeing it now in 2024. It is no coincidence that we see that the Supreme Court has allowed the White House to collude with social media companies to be able to determine what is misinformation, what is disinformation. In other words, to be able to censor and suppress our voices, that YouTube has set it up so that every single person, everyone out there, if you've been looking over the last week, you have seen half a dozen background updates by YouTube. You've noticed that in all of your feeds, you now have news media channels of information, whether you want it or not, whether you look up the news or not, you're getting injected in there, mainstream approved media news sources covering stories in a very specific way. And this is going to continue throughout the 2024 election cycle because they have an agenda. And that agenda is to change your vote or to discourage you not to vote. And it's working. That's how they fortify elections. And then when that doesn't work, well, then we've seen what happens in Bridgeport. We hear the allegations from this election in Pennsylvania and in Virginia, but we know for a fact, well, Bridgeport, Connecticut, as we announced last week, it's in the courts. We have the actual testimony from the courtroom. What are they doing? Oh, they count mail-in ballots that are illegal, and they counted it just like as if they were real, as well as stuffing the ballots. There's actual video of that. So again, the censors don't like us saying this, but this is the fact. This is what is happening. And it's
Okay.
happening around everyone.
But there's nothing wrong with our voting system, boss.
I never said it wasn't the most secure and safe election system that has ever existed in the history of mankind. I'm just
Well,
pointing out all the ways that it's flawed.
According to Jean-Pierre, it's not safe and secure. Okay, because the 2016 election was full of cheating and so forth. So was Stacey Abrams' election.
Stacey Abrams, Hillary Clinton, Anthony Brindisi, who was part of the New York 22nd district.
So,
yeah.
I'm going to go backwards a little bit because I just found the information I was looking for. And I actually misspoke. It's not safe third party. It's safe third country.
Yeah.
And what that basically determines is if somebody comes to the United States, we'll use the United States for example, from Venezuela, when they could have sought asylum in, say, Chile, which is a Geneva Convention country, then that would constitute a safe third country. And as a result, they can be deported from the United States to Chile in order for them to seek asylum in Chile.
Could, yes.
Okay. So essentially what this boils down to is if there is a country that is closer to you, that is a member of the Geneva Convention or Geneva Accords, then appropriately you should have sought asylum in that closer country.
Yeah.
Secondly, another part of it says that there must be a link between countries. Okay, so let's say somebody's seeking asylum from Venezuela. Okay. Venezuela has stronger ties to other countries in South America than it does to the United States.
Culturally.
Okay. As far as culturally and many other things.
Culture, language, foods, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it makes more sense for an asylum seeker to seek asylum in one of those countries rather than try to seek asylum in the United States. And this is essentially what the UN and the Asylum Information and many other.
That's the theory. That's the theory of it, but that's not what happens.
That's if the person seeking asylum is actually seeking asylum as opposed to seeking welfare benefits.
Yeah.
Because you might get asylum in another country, but you're going to be required to do a couple of things in order to stay there. This country, when you show up, apparently that's all that's required of you is to show up. And you get the whole world handed to you.
And that was one of the things that Senator Kennedy was trying to bring up with Mayorkas, in that many of these so-called asylum seekers, once they find out where they're coming from, what country they're fleeing in an effort to seek asylum, then it shouldn't even go to hearing as to whether or not they qualify for asylum. They should automatically be deported to a safe third country that would be better suited for their asylum.
That's how the law is supposed to work. That's not how it's going to be done. Again, because of the Democrats don't want to do it because one, they don't believe in borders, theoretically. I mean, yes, at Martha's Vineyard, absolutely. You try and get into AOC's building, you try and go and visit Charles Schumer or Nancy Pelosi, they absolutely believe in borders and walls then. But if you're talking about, average Joe down the street, no, they don't believe in borders. But also because they don't want the negative feedback of, well, if we're enforcing the law, then everything you've been saying goes out the window. These people have to go. No more of them come in. They want to violate that. They're playing a game. They're playing a game with our lives at risk and our finances. That is the backbone of this. They're destroying our nation. They're destroying our cities. I mean, look at Chicago. 8,000. It only took, you mentioned earlier, there's a threshold amount. That threshold amount is approximately 1.5% of the population of the area is all you need. 1.5% of your population, if that is made up of illegal aliens, your area, your infrastructure will collapse. That's true in New York. That's true in Chicago. Look at city after city, state after state. Look at it. Once they hit 1.5%, the system starts breaking down. That's not a lot. 1.5%. It is that low, and we are that far ahead of that. It's ridiculous.
Well, and again, I think not just looking at how much money we're given to Ukraine for their border, like you said earlier, Syria, how many millions of dollars have taxpayers spent building walls in other countries?
I believe that we have spent, if I'm remembering it correctly, $50 billion over the last 5 years.
Well, listen, you don't have to look far to look for the hypocrisy in the American government. Look at how the treatment has been between what they've given to Zelensky and what we're sending over to Israel. Zelensky, they took all the guns away from everybody in their country prior to the Russians invading them.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the first thing that what happened? They asked for guns, we send over guns, and the government is giving fully automatic weapons to the citizenry over there in the Ukraine. Same government here in the United States that's equipping the citizens to repel the Russian invasion is telling the Israelis they can't give weapons to their own citizens to fend off Hamas.
Okay.
So much so that this government put just last week or 2 weeks ago announced a 3-month moratorium on firearms exports. And why do you think that would be? Because everything that they're looking for that's going to go to the Ukraine has already been approved and ready to go. But anything that they're looking to send to Israel, this is a new conflict. This is only a month into it. So the budgets are still being put together with what aid we're going to send over there. But now they put a moratorium on. So for 3 months, we're not sending any firearms over there. So it's okay for Zelensky to get all this aid and all of this and all of that, but not for Israel. And I just got to wonder, which one of those two countries so far has the history of kicking back 10% to the big guy?
Well, there's that. That is one aspect of it. And which country is the target of, from our colleges, from political factions, which one is the target of hate across America and acts of violence across America? Forget about the rest of the world, just in America. We have people running around, pro Hamas, we love Hamas, Rashida Tlaib, who correctly got censured, who's talking about from the rivers to the sea, anti-Semitic all the way. And she's now trying to limit our ability to help Israel. Mind you, she has yet to say anything about the American hostages that were captured by Hamas, who are being tortured by Hamas right now. She doesn't care about any of them. This is a national interest. We have a national interest in this war. Our citizens were killed. Our citizens are hostages and being used as human shields and being tortured right now. And she's saying, oh, I don't care about them. Support the terrorists that captured our people, that killed our people, that are holding them as hostages.
Well, and
It doesn't matter. They're Jews. It doesn't matter. They're Jews. The Jews don't matter to the Democrats except when it's time to vote.
She ran away from that reporter that was asking her about the killing of Jewish babies. But yet, when she got up there and cried, because she's being censored, all those poor Palestinian babies.
Okay, yeah, this is why we're seeing the media change. By the way, it's not just Rashida Tlaib, who was correctly and justifiably censured, and I would love to see her removed from office. I think she's aiding and abetting terrorism, which is a crime. By the way, HR 771, someone asked me about it. I'm going to talk about it on my Sunday live stream, but it was a absolutely just bill. We, by law in the United States, we cannot fund or directly or indirectly, this is the law, directly or indirectly fund terrorist organizations. Hamas is a terrorist organization, period. We don't give them humanitarian aid. But we have seen that the news media has changed the story. Notice, you don't see new articles anymore that talk about the American hostages. You don't hear in American news, any of the news stories talking about the Americans, the number that have been killed. You don't hear that anymore. All you hear is Hamas for Palestine. There is no such thing as Palestine. It does not exist. That country is not on the map anywhere in the world. It's an idea. It doesn't exist. And so, they're trying to promote this idea because they're trying to support Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, but they can't say that because that's illegal. And the moment that you did say, oh, we're supporting terrorism, the American people will lose their minds.
I don't even know if that's true anymore.
No, I think it is, which is why they're very careful to say pro-Hamas from the river to the sea. Well, one, that's anti-Semitic, and two, it's, again, they say pro-Palestine. There is no such place. There is Hamas. That is the government. That's the government that was elected by the people in Gaza, in the West Bank. That's who they elected, a terrorist organization. You know what? If it were up to me, yes, I support the idea that there's going to be 4 hours out of every day for the humanitarian aid. Fantastic. I don't care about that. The America doesn't send a single dime while there is active fighting going on, and there is even one American held hostage by Hamas. Screw you guys, you're terrorists. We're not sending you anything. We're not going to give it to the Red Cross or the Red Crescent or any other organization, because no matter which one you give it to, it eventually has to go through the government that runs the West Bank and Gaza, and that is Hamas. That is terrorism. They will get funded. So that's indirect or direct. They don't get anything. Give us all our people, stop fighting, and maybe we think about sending you something.
But we already know that our industrial complex don't care about none of that crap. They'd rather fund both sides of the war so they can make their money. They don't care about anything else. And that's exactly what they're trying to continue to do.
See, and maybe you guys disagree with me on this, but a lot of times in these conflicts, people like to point to and say, well, it's all the military industrial complex. No, not really. The military industrial complex, as I understand it, they want the tension. They want to be right up to the point of actual fighting, because they want everyone to arm up. They want everyone to have the defenses. They want people to constantly buy their goods to prepare. But actual warfare is actually bad for them. That takes
No.
away their customers. That takes
No,
away.
because
They actually
listen,
lose money on that. What they
if you
want
need
is preparation.
but if you have to keep your forces equipped with 1,000 Bradley fighting vehicles, and that's all you can sell is 1,000, you're not going to be happy if your customer just buys 1,000 and doesn't have a need to replace them.
But
You
that's
have
why
a
you
need
build
to
a
replace
better.
them through attrition, through battle.
No
They
one.
have.
No, they. What they do
Actually,
is
they
keep-
make more
Why do you
money.
think Vietnam went on as long as it did? Because every one of those helicopters that got shot down in Vietnam had to be replaced by 3 more. They need the weapons to be used. They need the tanks and the carriers and the trucks all to be destroyed so they could all be replaced. Because if they sit there,
They make
if every-
no, Frank. They make more money through R&D than they do through sales.
Oh yeah, but they still got to sell. But listen, what dollar
Okay,
are they going to
in an
make?
active war, they can't do as much R&D because all the spending is going to buy new equipment.
part of the thing that people don't seem to, the part of the math that doesn't make sense to a lot of people. So you sell the tank, and then you sell a better rocket to take out the tank. So therefore you make a better tank because there's a new rocket, and then the cycle continues and continues. And that's where they're getting most of their upgrades. That's where, again, it's R&D. It's always getting the new prototype. It's always getting to change whatever you have as your gear. It's always
And a
being
lot of the
updated.
R&D money dries up when you're in an active conflict.
The cost of goods go up, the cost of the raw materials, the cost of actually employing your workers, the actual shipping, the risk of those goods being taken away from you or being destroyed. It's actually, for the military industrial complex, their best moment is right before the first bullet is fired in a war. Right up until then, they're making money. And then immediately after that, their profit margin starts dropping significantly very quickly. They don't want continuous war. They want people prepared for war. They want people afraid for war. The military industrial complex isn't the problem. They're not the reason why Hamas is attacking. Iran made the rocket, not because of the military industrial complex, but because they're genocidal fanatics. And that's what Hamas is. So it's not that they have, Iran isn't doing this and gave them 8,000 rockets because they needed the money. They did it because they want to commit genocide. It's not the military industrial complex. It really isn't.
No.
No, I'm not saying that the military industrial complex is the reason we have Hamas. We have Hamas because of a book. That's why we have Hamas.
The interpretation of a book, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why we have that. I'm talking about what we have here with our politicians constantly. This constant war, this hawking all the time. And believe me, a lot of the shit that you see today was developed 10 years ago that they've already done the R&D for the stuff they're going to sell us 10 years from now is already sitting in some warehouse someplace right next to the Ark of the Covenant.
Probably. But Rashida Tlaib, as an example, and Anna Presley, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Hakeem Jeffries, the Progressive Caucus. Their complaint about all of this, quite honestly, is just protecting their political position. They're politically pandering. They don't care. They have some of the most evil positions that have been in our government since the 1920s, the 1930s. I mean, I think this is really evil and vile. It's not just that they want the open border. It's not just that they don't care that there are known terrorists entering the United States threatening our people. It's not just that there is a growing number of religious-backed individuals committing mass shootings, endangering the lives of American citizens. It's not just that. It's that they actually hate America. that they hate our existence. I mean, that is part of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, the progressive leaders of tomorrow. When we look at these people, their objective is to destroy the Constitution and make their own rules because that's what they feel is a better idea.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and actually, as I've commented on a few different of our live streams, okay, there is an active push to eliminate the Constitution. And the big reason why is because the Constitution gets into their way. There's only so much that you can twist what the Constitution says. Okay. And a lot of the stuff that they are wanting to enact and put forth is blatantly against the Constitution. I mean, and they know it. Okay. They know it because you see Gavin Newsom putting forth an amendment to the Constitution to basically nullify the Second Amendment. Okay, they know what they are trying to do and what they're trying to push for is unconstitutional, yet they still try to push it. They want to get rid of the Constitution. That thing that I had just had up was related to what's going on in Israel, and basically escalated over here where we had a bunch of pro-Palestinian riots happen all across universities across the United States.
Cooper Union.
Columbia,
Let's name a couple of them. Cooper Union, UMass, and Cornell University, 3 right off the top of my head.
has just suspended pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel clubs on its campuses.
Which is wrong. Why punish the pro-Israel students? They didn't do anything. Again, if you want to be pro-Palestine, let's be honest, you're being pro-Hamas.
Equity. That's equity. You can't punish one side without punishing the other side equally.
And again, equity.
One side attacks
evil.
the other side, and then you call for a ceasefire.
Equity is evil. It is dehumanizing. It is an imbalance, and it is stupid. There is evil in the world. Iran is one of those evils in the world. Their ideology, their theology that they are promoting through Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, their agents in Syria and Iraq, they're evil. There is evil in the world. And it's okay to say, I'm against the evil in the world, and I don't have to deal with that has nothing to do with anyone else. And you know what? I don't care what everyone else is doing. I'm against the evil in the world. And that's easy to point out. But these colleges, they're now afraid. Oh, people have noticed that we have been teaching, let's be honest, they're teaching anti-Semitism. There's a reason why why Cornell University have students that have come out publicly and not only threatened other students, but they said they are part of a terrorist organization. And that is the same university that, hey, oddly enough, has a professor who is running around publicly saying how they are getting excited, exhilarated at the death of babies by these same fanatical terrorists. Gee, these schools are teaching anti-Semitism, and they're getting away with it. And people like Rashida Tlaib is like, see, it's okay. She can't be that bad because the colleges, Harvard, Cornell University, Binghamton University, they all support her anti-Semitism. So it can't be that bad. This is, God, the corruption that is happening in our country right now. This is evil. This is evil in our faces.
Okay, I got to say something. I think it is totally cool that we got stilettos and shotguns on the show, guys.
I like the name. I don't know who that is, but I like their
Oh,
name.
you gotta go watch her content, man.
She's got some great content.
Yeah.
I've been
Okay.
following her for a while now.
Carrie's awesome, and we understand Carrie just made some pretty good strides. Educational director, if I'm not mistaken, Carrie. You're gonna have to remind me of some of the new titles that you've been accumulating up to the year. It's kind of hard to keep up with everything.
She needs to come on. She needs to come on the show.
Oh, we'd love to have her on the show.
We have her on the other podcast. I had her on the other podcast a while back. I've been trying to get her to come over to stop in over here. I guess it's usually she's got one hell of a ridiculous schedule. I imagine she's everywhere all the time and never where we are. So we she has an open door policy, as far as us. She's always welcome to be here.
So right now we have a huge opioid crisis in this country, correct?
Amongst other things.
Would anybody deny that?
No one with a brain.
Okay. Riddle me this.
What?
Why is this being allowed on the market?
An opioid-like drink masquerading as a wholesome alcohol alternative.
It's opioid-like. That's why. Because opioids themselves are not necessarily illegal. Medically, there is a medical use for it. It can be used medically. Opioids, it's the abuse of opioids and the derivatives of opioids that are illegal, or the use is illegal. But there is a medicinal product, and if it's opioid-like, that's not an opioid.
Addicted in a more legal way.
Exactly.
Well, that's just like, did you see the report about the meat that came out? They're going to start putting labels on our meat to tell us how bad our meat is, so that you'll go buy the lab-grown meat.
Oh, God, no. I would never buy lab-grown meat. This thing is called Kratom.
Mm-hmm.
Kratom. I think it's pronounced.
Yeah, it's made from kava.
I'm sorry, but weren't the kids like doing this crap a couple of years ago by mixing like Kool-Aid and it's like flu medicine? What was that crap they were doing in the street?
I think you're thinking
when
of
they were
something else.
drinking NyQuil, so they had to take the stuff out of NyQuil and make it a
they would
daytime or a nighttime.
Yeah, they down
Yeah, it's
dexamethasone, I think it is. It's basically a cough suppressant. If you take large enough quantities of it, you can get a hell of a high buzz from it. But once you start getting that buzz, it's not too long after that, you're dead.
Well, you know what? Listen, I have said it before and I've said it again. I'm the guy who gives a fork to a kid and points his way to the electrical outlet, because I know that once he does it the first time, he's not going to do it again. Listen, it's at some point, the herd's going to have to get thinned out. And if a couple of people wind up leading the way and other people follow the example without learning the lesson, then they're going to have to follow that way. We can't prevent everything from everybody. And you know what's going to happen. This will be another one of those situations where we need another piece of legislation, another awareness campaign. We need another commercial. We need more people going and doing this. People doing it. Leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Look, we're talking about a generation that's they eat Tide Pods and they snort condoms. Okay.
Well, honestly, I could give a shit less. Okay. I think a majority of the drug laws that we have that have been enacted on the federal level are unconstitutional anyway. Okay. I mean, you could possibly twist the interstate commerce clause to give authority for some of them, but
but when you have to start doing contortions to try and figure out how can we apply a new law? Stop. If you have to figure it out, if you have to figure out all kinds of crap just because you want to impose a new law or a new restriction, it's not the addict on the drug you have to worry about. It's the addict of power that you have to worry about.
And here's the thing that everybody misses in the Constitution. Okay.
No.
Regardless of whether the Constitution gives authority to Congress to enact something, or even if it is thought that Congress has the authority to enact something, the primary question that should always be asked, is it prudent and proper?
That's a bit tricky.
Okay. Number one, is it prudent for Congress to enact such legislation based upon its financial situation, blah, 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 blah? I mean, there's a lot of factors. Okay. Or would it be more prudent for a similar law to be enacted at a lower jurisdiction? Is it more prudent to enact similar legislation at a lower jurisdiction in order to preserve freedom and liberty? Okay. The same equation goes whether or not it's proper for Congress to enact such legislation, regardless of whether what that legislation is. Okay. Or is it more proper for similar legislation to be enacted at the state level or even at the local levels? Those are questions that normally are not asked. Okay.
And that's why we have all these 3-letter organizations that continually make laws. And I think that's a great lead in, Frank, to your ATF.
I know that you were going right to the ATF, but I would. Well, let's deal with the ATF.
Give me just a second, because I'm going to actually read that clause or that section of the Constitution.
Well,
okay, right here. And actually, it's not prudent. It's necessary and proper. So I did misspeak. Okay. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or any department or officer thereof. Okay. So the first qualification is determining whether or not a certain piece of legislation is necessary. If they cannot demonstrate why it is necessary for the federal government to enact such legislation, then that bill should be tossed out. Now, the next criteria is determining whether or not it's proper for the United States government to pass such legislation. And if it is more proper for it to be passed at a lower jurisdiction, then that's where it should be left. Congress should not be dealing with it.
But then Congress wouldn't be able to raise all the money, and they wouldn't be able to have all the donations from the larger interests that would allow it to promote and continue this thing.
But
this is why we got Narcan. Narcan's now being considered to be given out, and there are some who are trying to suggest that this should be a national legislation, as well as many states are trying to push this to say, oh, we should be giving Narcan. It should be out and available at the drugstore.
You can go anywhere around where I live. You can go into any pharmacy and say you want Narcan, and they are required to give it to you free of charge.
Well, it's just like the needle exchange.
Yeah.
Why the heck are we needle exchanging? Why are we giving safe places for these addicts to shoot up?
Look, last week after we got done with the show, I got an hour of sleep. I got up and I had to travel in New York trains. I had to travel on New York trains to get onto a bus to be able to get back to Binghamton to spend 10 hours cleaning a house that I cannot sell until I had cleared everything because a crack addict, a heroin addict to be exact, I'm pretty sure I know exactly which addict it was, destroyed my house, destroyed thousands of dollars of equipment, of furniture, he just destroyed a crap load of stuff, as well as prevented me from being able to make a sale of my home, which is time sensitive. I don't have a lot of time to do it before it gets foreclosed on. I actually had to spend money I don't have to spend time I didn't have available. And thank God I was able to get 10 people to show up to help me. Otherwise, I couldn't have got it done. And I was up for 44 hours out of 48 hours to deal with that. And here we are enabling these drug addicts. We're enabling them to look around and go, oh, well, if I get strung out because of heroin, they'll just bring me back with Narcan. So there is no responsibility on themselves. They have no reason to stop. That's what these safe places do. That's the reality. They destroy our communities. They harm people directly, either directly through their actions or indirectly because of the damage. And we're teaching them that it's okay. Keep going. I'm sorry. I disagree with this. No,
Okay. So if you're prescribed it, you can be required to pay up to a $40 copay. Individuals who themselves are at risk of overdose or their family members may acquire naloxone, Narcan, using patient-specific prescription or through a standing order in all pharmacies in New York State. No individual enrollment is necessary. Pharmacies participating in the New York State AIDS Drug Assistance Program are eligible to participate in NCAP. There are no or lower out-of-pocket expenses when getting naloxone at a participating pharmacy. Only the following naloxone formulas are eligible for NCAP.
Yeah, I don't care which formula it is. We should not be giving it out. It is. Okay. There's nothing humane about this.
Well, and police officers shouldn't be carrying it around.
If you overdose, that is a consequence of the drugs that you have taken, the risk you assigned to yourself. It is not our responsibility to bring you back. Sorry. Well, no. Goodbye.
All right. There have been a couple of instances where first responders have been exposed to something that has nearly killed them, where the Narcan has had to have been administered to them.
That's fine.
Right. So to say they shouldn't have it, they should.
No, I mean, have it to distribute to the junkies.
No, not like, look, listen, they're using the Narcan like lollipops.
Yeah, that's my problem.
In an emergency situation, your duty is to save a life. You're a first responder, especially in the medical community. Your duty is to save a life. You're not there to be the person who's going to be the person that's going to be judgmental of how that person wound up in that situation. That's not your job. Your job is
I'm not questioning. I'm taking that away from them. They don't get that choice.
No, but if there's a tool that saves a life, and you remove that tool away from them, it's like saying that you're not going to have a defibrillator in an ambulance anymore because smokers shouldn't be allowed to
be recovered from a heart attack. Not the same argument. Not the same argument.
It can. You can extrapolate it. I have a problem with it being used as a method of saying, this is your second shot. This is your second chance. For you screw up. Listen. I'm talking from a place of personal experience, having lost my nephew. All right. I'm going to get personal with you.
I
My
understand.
nephew, grade A student, Eagle Scout, captain of the marching band, captain of the fencing team, one of the most brilliant, loving people you'd ever meet in your life. Broke his knee, had to have major surgery on his leg. They wound up giving him opioids while he was in the hospital, and he got badly addicted to it. He was in and out of rehab. He was doing this, and when he went to college just fucked him up even worse. Okay, and he came out, he was clean, and he was going back and forth through the process. And one night, after being clean for a good length of time, it happened, and my nephew lost his life. They found him far too long where the Narcan wouldn't have done any good. Okay, he was already gone by the time they found him. Now, my nephew was a very bright and promising young man that could have done anything he wanted in this world. I mean, anything. He didn't know his ass from his elbows from classic cars, but he was a good kid that put himself in a very bad position because of an addiction. And that position eventually cost his life. I am both heartbroken to this day, and I'm angry to this day at him, at the medical community, because they wound up giving him drugs at pretty much a non-restricted level. Because the medical community, if you look at a lot of these people that get into heroin and stuff like that, it usually starts with a prescribed medication that they get addicted to. And it's a lot of times you have that happen where the addiction,
it's very common.
I'm not saying it's not common. It's not the majority.
This is a bit. Listen, I live in pain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't take aspirin because I'm afraid of anything becoming addictive. All right.
I understand that.
Now, on the flip side, I got a piece of shit cousin that took my most beloved uncle for everything the man had that he worked 60 years for, millions of dollars, took his health, took his sanity, took everything that he could possibly take, put it up his nose, in his veins, swallowed it, did whatever the hell he wanted to do with it. This piece of crap is still walking around in and out of prison 100 times because the system keeps saving his ass. The system keeps saving him. So you got somebody who's just a bad person, an overall bad person who's destined for that kind of life, is a real piece of garbage, is still around. And you get a kid who had all the potential in the world, made a couple of bad choices, very, very, very bad choices. And believe me, I do not excuse his choices at all, because I have to be consistent with my anger and my rage with stuff like that. I wish to God they could have got to my nephew sooner and had the Narcan and saved his life. Maybe that would have been the thing that finally, at long last, would have said, okay, now we have a problem that we could remedy it with. All right. But when they use it over and over and over and over again, as to say, this is the supplement, this is my plan B, this is my plan B to alleviate my personal responsibility, then I have a problem with it. I'm not saying take it off the ambulances. I'm not saying take it out of the toolbox. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is maybe you just got to figure out a better way to do things than just giving everybody that plan B.
So I appreciate and understand. I am saddened to hear that story. And I know there are many stories like that. There are. And I'm not, and I know people think, well, I come off very heartless, like I'm not appreciating that. I do. And I do realize there are many good people who might be able to be saved that are in the masses. When I say no Narcan, I understand there are people that might be saved, and I'm dooming them too. And that I know that's very tough for a lot of people to accept and say, well, Mike, then they say that's harsh. And I'll agree. It is harsh. But in the same way, I have to be consistent in when I do appreciate, and I am sad to hear this, Frank, but I have to be consistent as well. Overwhelmingly, the numbers, the damage, the danger to America, I can't, I appreciate and understand because I do know people. I know people myself that this relates to. I still think we have made a problem by making this like candy. We've made a massive problem with this, and I think the answer is take the candy away.
I just seem to have a little bit, when I look at the 19-year-old kid who's still not mentally developed yet, and say maybe this is the person that deserves to have an extra shot because they have some time to turn it around, versus the 55-year-old guy that every freaking weekend has got to get this shit shot into him because he doesn't freaking learn at some point. Maybe there's a tipping point in the scale that we could look at and say, you know what? Maybe there are some lives out there that still have a chance, and the ones that don't, you got to wash your hands of them.
I'm not so heartless to say that I wouldn't consider it. I'm not so heartless to say I wouldn't consider that.
Believe me, listen, every time I think of my nephew, every fucking time I think of my nephew, my blood boils. My blood boils because not only did he take himself away from his family and all the people that loved him, but he puts me in a position where I have to try and figure out, okay, how am I supposed to parse that situation and contrast it from my beliefs? As somebody who's never smoked a joint in his life, and my friends would know better than to ever do any of that crap around me, because I would be the one that would snap and I would lose my shit. I would throw beating on the first worst person that brought that crap around me. So I'm mad that my nephew puts me in that position, that I now have to try and say, well, should I lump him in with the rest of the useless pieces of crap, that are out there in the street mugging, raping, killing, and all the rest of that stuff so they can get $1 for the next fix? Or do I have to look at him and say to myself, maybe there was a chance of redemption. Maybe there was a chance that he could have been saved. Maybe there was a chance. Is there some point where you say, do we have a responsibility to help people as a society? Because as a society, we've allowed these problems to get so out of hand because we've allowed this shit to go on for as long as it have. I don't know. Where is the distinction? I just get so angry. I get so angry and I get so bitter and I get so upset because I know addicts that have turned around, that have been my cousin Frank, the piece of shit that he is, that have been as bad, if not worse than him, and have turned their life around and done something extraordinary and done something with their life and had a chance.
As a recovering, I'd like to weigh in.
Oh, sure.
I think, from my experience, and where we are today, that the medical field needs to take more, what's the word I'm looking for? More, they need to step up because they created a problem when it comes to prescriptions.
And actually, I know that a lot of pharmaceutical companies promote their products by basically giving bounties to providers to prescribe their medications.
Well, that was the next thing I was going to say was pharmaceutical needs to step up too.
Okay.
As far as your everyday addict out there, whether it be an alcoholic or a drug addict, it's mental health. There failed them a mental health issue.
Well,
that was my issue. Mm-hmm. I had over $150 habit a day of almost pure meth going up my nose for years. People ask me, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired after almost dying twice. I quit on my own. I had no help. And that was tough. That was really tough.
There
And I
aren't a
tell
lot of people who say that. Yeah.
that I've been sober for almost 30 years. You know what keeps me sober? I don't trust the shit that's out there. That's what
Well,
keeps me sober.
I
It's not the fact that, I mean, yeah, after almost 30 years, is there willpower there? Well, yes, there is. But there are times within this 30 years, man, I'd like a line just to get me through that day. I'm depressed today. Man, I'd like that line. You know, I really got to get this stuff done. I really don't feel like, man, I'd like that line. But I think until, yes, it is, some of it is society. Some of it is industry. But
well,
one passes the buck to the other so many times. We cannot get the help unless the help is truly 100% there. And yes, that's hard to say too, because did I let down my family and some of my friends that, hey, we'll open our door for you when I was homeless? Man, that money was going up my nose. But I held down a full-time job too. I was homeless, but putting it up my nose was more important than putting a roof over my head. And then them people telling me, well, you got to go. It's up here. Why did I get into my drug habit? Well, let's see. I was molested when I was younger and got pregnant.
here's one of the big issues. Okay, and you bring it up. We do not facilitate mental health in this country the way it should be facilitated. Okay. And one of the biggest reasons is because pharmaceutical companies have so much power and everything is push another drug at it, push another drug about it. I mean, regardless of whether it's weight loss, mental health, pain, whatever. Okay. 9 times out of 10, the first option in a lot of cases is throw a pill at it. Okay. Our pharmaceutical companies, first off, on a good many drugs, are outrageously overpriced.
I wouldn't say that. That's not fair. That part isn't really fair. There are examples
In
of
a
it.
lot of ways, yeah, it is.
Well, no, because if you've looked at the numbers, and there are exceptions out there. There's that idiot who was charging for the what was that shot? The
EpiPen.
EpiPen.
Here in West Virginia, Joe Manson's daughter.
That's who. Yeah. I mean, there are those idiots who are charging 1,000 times what it's supposed to be, what it needs to be. There's those examples. But when we look at it, most people don't realize you're talking about covering not only the cost of finding the drug, testing the drug for 7 years, and then marketing it, putting it out there and trying to recoup so that you can have the other 20 drugs that you're going.
And you would understand why I'm saying what I say.
Okay.
Most of our drugs are radically overpriced. And one of the biggest reasons why they are radically overpriced is because regulations imposed by the federal government discourage any type of competition. Okay. Most of your medications are from just a very few big pharma companies. Okay. it is about impossible for a small pharmaceutical company to even get established because of the regulatory burdens that are placed upon them. And the result is that drugs that could actually offer better results are not allowed to enter the marketplace because the competition isn't allowed. Okay. There could have been, who knows, if a small pharmaceutical company was able to establish itself, okay, and not be regulated out of existence, there could have been alternatives that were less addictive than the opioids that we currently use.
But there are small pharmaceutical companies. They usually deal with one drug. They start off as a single drug, and either the drug works or they're out of business. I mean, Amlin Pharmaceuticals was one of them. I followed them for many years as a stockbroker. There's a whole industry. Most people don't know any of their names because, again, the process takes 10 years. Most of these companies spend half that time trading at under $1. They're not on the New York Stock Exchange. They're not on the NASDAQ very often, but they exist. Most of them just aren't successful and they go bankrupt because their drug doesn't work.
Because
their drug doesn't work.
Sometimes it's because their drug doesn't work. A lot of times it's because they're regulated out of existence.
Well, and a lot of times it's because the treatment, gives you return customers. The cure doesn't.
Well, there's
okay, and that's another thing. Okay, and dealing with mental health and dealing with a lot of health-related issues, we don't seek a cure. We seek a treatment.
Live with it.
Because a treatment is a long-term path of revenue, where a cure is a one-time shot at revenue.
No, I don't disagree that the system has inherent flaws, especially when we see government step in, which only complicates it and makes it worse more often than not. They're increasing the cost. They're enabling the pharmaceutical companies to say, just live with it. Just live with it. We just need people to live with it. And they keep pushing it. Or most recently, get this experimental drug. We have no idea what's going on, but you can't sue the pharmaceutical companies and just take it because we said so. I mean, that's a horrible precedent that we have set and now is affecting tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of lives just in our country alone, not talking about the rest of the world. But there are certain realities that are out there too. And it's more nuanced an argument. And
Dal also points out the fact that with a lot of pharmaceutical corporations, you have government regulations that step in. America negotiates with other countries, and then the other countries demand that they get American drugs at reduced prices. So the American government mandates the drug companies have to sell these drugs overseas for a much reduced price, meaning that the bulk of the profit now has to be strapped back on the back of the American population to fulfill the request of getting a cheap price over there for some treaty or some other bullshit that goes on there. Because you got to remember, over there, you got all the socialized medicine everywhere. So the governments are the ones paying for the drugs by way of taxation through the people. And then they dole it out accordingly, to their need versus, all the rest of that.
Yeah.
But again, that's another price control measure that's put on American companies. So we wind up carrying the bulk of that profit that they now have to make. And listen, nobody ever said that the medical community was an altruistic profit entity.
Oh, no, not for hundreds of years at least.
It's not been
it has been.
For a very, very, very long time. There was a profit motive. I mean, the day of the house call doctor is long gone.
Mhm.
You know, the house, but also the house called doctor probably didn't have to spend the next 27 years of his practice trying to pay back his medical bills from his education. You know, because it
Well,
was probably
that's another area where
yeah,
corruption. Okay,
yeah,
I mean,
and then you
corruption
have
has literally entered into some of the most widely needed areas of our lives. Okay. Corruption is highly apparent in any type of educational institutions, regardless of whether it's primary schools all the way up to postgraduate schools.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's CRT
Um,
and all that. Yeah,
extremely corrupt. I'm not saying every school district is corrupt, but it is very rampant.
I would to some degree or another. Yes.
Now, that being said, we've got massive corruption within all of our healthcare, all across the healthcare industry, regardless of how you want to look at it.
True.
And a lot of that corruption is what's driven up much of our medical costs.
Mm-hmm.
It's
One of the
also
factors.
what has literally done away with the house calling doctors.
Mm-hmm.
It's also made it so that it is extremely hard for people to actually practice medicine without paying into the corruption.
It's almost impossible, especially once you look at the insurance.
Okay. And then that's another industry that is just striped with corruption is the insurance industry. In a lot of cases, insurance is such a scam because when it comes down to it and you actually need it, they will fight tooth and nail not to pay. And insurance, in a lot of ways, has driven up the cost of medical procedures and medical care so much. And a lot of this is, if we actually look back into it, is due to regulations that have been passed by governments. It has literally set the stage for a lot of this corruption to be able to be perpetrated.
well, also if you look at the people that are going into, you know, medical school versus law school, you're getting a lot more lawyers these days than you are doctors.
Yep.
You know, so you because why? Because medical malpractice is a hell of an industry to get into. And
It's huge.
I mean, I was at something I was talking about off camera before that. I'm not at legal liberty to discuss. All I could tell you is that it involved testimonies that I had to sit through, and I sat through the testimonies of far more lawyers than I did doctors, and it was a doctor oriented situation that I was having to pay attention to, and when you listen to doctors and how they have to put things, it's like they have, you know, the old cartoon with the angel and the devil. They're both, you know, one sitting on each shoulder of you. You know, it's like I think each doctor has got like a defense attorney and a prosecutor sitting on each shoulder. You know, trying to tell them what they can say, what they can't say, what they can prescribe, what they can't subscribe. You know, what they can, you know, they have to walk. Doctors have got to walk that fine line. And then, you know, I don't know. Are doctors of today the same of the doctors that when we were all kids? You know,
No.
is the Hippocratic oath the same as it was back then, or is it you know, is do no harm any more a part of their credo than do not get sued. You know,
Well, honestly,
Hmm.
if you look at most of your medical clinics, okay, most of your doctor's offices, they are nothing more than assembly lines. Doctors, actually, healthcare professionals don't get a chance to really know their patients anymore.
Well, look at
Okay, you're given 15 minutes, maybe a half hour for an appointment, and then you're kicked out the door because they've got the next appointment they've got to get to.
thank you, Obamacare. That's what Obamacare is about. It's
But that started before Obamacare.
to an extent it did, but
well, now you don't even have a doctor anymore. You have a nurse practitioner that you have to make an
Mhm.
appointment. You're
Yeah.
going to see a nurse practitioner, and the nurse practitioner, who is very, very, very well versed in the medical field, generally has a pretty damn good idea what's wrong with you, can actually order prescriptions, order medications, can order tests, can do everything that the doctor can do. I don't think they're allowed to cut into you, but they can stitch
No.
you up. They can give you shots. They can draw the blood. You know, they can take your temperature. They can do everything they can do, except on a surgical level. I think is where they.
The only thing is they have to be practicing under a licensed doctor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like
Okay.
you're an electrician,
Um,
but not the master electrician.
kind
Mhm.
of. Kind of. But the corruptions we're seeing in this, let's expand out a little bit, because it's not just in the medical field, and we're seeing
No.
this not just in the way this is happening. Let's look at news media in particular, gun control, another aspect of it, and sometimes when they collude, like what we saw, and we have to be a little careful in wording this, because like last week, our show was blocked worldwide because we dared to have like 5 seconds of content that YouTube didn't like. Well, this is, I got to be careful here. There was, we learned information about a Tennessee shooting. I think we all know which one I'm speaking about,
Mhm.
because it was very publicized. And by the way, you notice Monday, very publicized. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone became aware of this information. Tuesday, it was vilified that we learned this information. The media and politicians were upset that we were told the truth, and then it disappeared from everyone's lips. It's gone. The media killed the story. Yet, and that's, I believe, yet another form of the corruption that we're seeing. This is the problem with the misinformation guidance, part of the fortification we're seeing. It's not good for the 2024 election. It's not good for Democrats to actually look at the reality in the world and deal with it. And yes, it may be hard for some, it may be unpleasant for some, but it's the reality. Let's deal with it.
Well, I want to. Okay, you're talking about
Tennessee.
mainstream media.
Yeah.
Okay, and you also hit on big tech. Okay, let's also look at another area that's related in this: telecom. Okay, how many major telecom companies are there in the United States?
About half a dozen.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And if you really look into that half a dozen, you'll
Mhm.
find it's even smaller than that.
The majority of
And
those
actually, if
shares
you
are
look at
free.
tier one providers, it's a lot lower than that.
Yeah, there's about 3.
Okay. And those tier one providers literally control all telecommunications.
The majority of it, yeah, overwhelmingly the majority. I'd say probably
No, they
80%
control
of the market.
all telecommunications because all switching goes through their COs, central offices.
Oh, okay. If you're talking about how they're routing and their control of the routing and the networking, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, they got the
Whether it
infrastructure.
be telephone, whether it be internet services or network services, it's all routed through essentially 3 big layer 1 service providers.
Yeah, they built up the
Okay.
infrastructure.
And
Yeah.
everybody else has to deal with those 3. Okay. And if at any time they wanted to shut it down, any one of them shut down, it would cripple us.
I think this was an episode of South Park.
But here's
Might have
the
been.
thing is that people don't understand from an aspect of freedom of speech and so forth. These 3 big layer 1 or level 1 providers can literally stop anybody from being able to get their information out.
Yeah, but they weren't the ones that did this on Monday.
No,
weren't
they
the ones
weren't.
that killed it on Tuesday.
But we are getting to that point. And a lot of it is, like I said, it's due to regulations that have been imposed.
Well, here's one quick regulation for you that's been imposed by the federal government. By 2028, all new cars in the American manufacturing system must be equipped with a device that allows the government to shut your vehicle off.
I can believe that too.
Yep, that's coming too. Listen, guys, we only got a few minutes left before the 2-hour mark comes around. So before we hit this, I just wanted to hit 2 things before I forget about them. Frame and receiver rule. Dead, done, finished. The frame and receiver rule. The courts have found that the ATF overstepped their boundaries in requiring people to serialize their own firearms that they manufacture on their own. So to sort of borrow from an old shoe company's old slogan, just build it.
Mhm.
Okay, you want your parts, you want your stuff. Go build it. It's your right. It's your legal right to do it as an American citizen. You want to go build it, go build it. Can't stop you. The other thing, Fifth Circuit came out and said that. Oh, by the way, that pistol brace rule.
Yeah.
Nope, can't do that either. Sorry, Mr. Biden. Sorry, ATF. You can't take something that's been on the market and legal for 10 years and then rewrite the definition and misrepresent what the device does and then classify it as a machine gun or as something that turns an ordinary AR pistol or AK pistol into a machine gun. Because somehow making your gun more accurate, a device that makes your gun more accurate makes it worse. As opposed to being able to just shoot willy-nilly all over the place. That makes it worse. So those are 2 big things in ATF world this week that came out. If you want to,
there's also another one.
If you want a pistol brace, go put it on your AR and your AK pistol. You're right. What do you got? A
There's
third one
another
for me?
one too.
Here's the trifecta.
That's coming about. And this one, it's looking like the Supreme Court will actually rule contrary to the Second Amendment. I'm trying to, it's the Ramey case.
Don't know it.
One for anybody that's been accused of domestic violence.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to find the.
Well, I read an article that the dude that this all started with,
As U.S. versus
said he didn't
Rahimi.
care anymore. He didn't want to own a vehicle, a firearm.
Well, the standing of a plaintiff or the person that a case is named after can often change before the case is actually adjudicated. The point of view of the person who that thing was named can change before it's
Oh,
adjudicated.
well, we know that from Roe versus Wade.
Right,
They
from
used
Roe v.
that
Wade.
woman.
She became a staunch pro-life advocate, after that was adjudicated,
Mhm.
Originally, but still somebody's position can change while it's still working through the court system. Doesn't change the argument of that case.
Yeah.
Now, but it's looking like the Supreme Court is going to uphold the 1994 law that basically makes it illegal for anybody accused of domestic violence to accused and or convicted of domestic violence from owning firearms.
Convicted, yes. Accused, no.
Accused, they're not going to go for accused. And even if they went and said convicted, it's going to be a standard by that. There's going to have to be a standard, especially in a world where they talk about words or violence. It's going to be open to so much.
Actually, if you have a DVRO, a domestic violence restraining order, it is illegal for you to own firearms. So you don't even have to have a conviction. All you have to do is have a domestic violence restraining order filed against you.
All right, but a domestic violence restraining order is usually something that you've already gone through. There's been a process at that. It's not an ERPO.
No.
It's a red flag type of thing where they don't give you any means of defending yourself, and they do it all in quiet. If you have somebody who's been has a restraining order as a result of a conviction of domestic violence, okay, that's I'm sorry, my knees buckled up against my desk and killing me. I don't think this court is going to. I don't think they're going to lean left on this. I think they're going to probably come down straight down on constitutional lines with it. And it might not be something that makes everybody happy, but everybody will be able to agree that it's constitutional. They'll have enough conditions in there that would say why it is, what it is, and what circumstances it is, because you're talking about a situation where there's such a wide variety of instances that, what classifies domestic violence and stuff like that. I mean, they're going to have to be pretty damn specific before they start taking away somebody's rights.
Should be.
And
I would hope that, and I would hope that they would. I would hope that they would take it from that point of view, that you have to be very, very defined, very, very specific.
Also, given the nature of at least 2 or 3 of the people on this court who have been erroneously accused of various things, that is going to very possibly weigh on the decision, because they're going to say, I mean, if you yourself have been victimized by certain allegations and uncorroborated, accusations, unproven, unsubstantiated allegations, you're probably going to wind up being a little more sympathetic to people who've been accused of stuff too, where you're going to have to say, you better be damn well certain that this is a bad person before you start taking away somebody's rights. At least you would hope.
You would hope. You would definitely hope that.
All right, listen, you guys.
Okay, so
I gotta get out of here right now. My knee is swelled up the size of a basketball. I am not doing very well today, and I got to be on my feet all day tomorrow, because tomorrow, I will be doing something that Vass and I did a couple of years ago.
Oh,
I'll be going to the air show here in North Carolina tomorrow, and the Union County Air Show. And I will be getting up close and personal with some pretty big firearms tomorrow. I'm gonna try and stick my camera up at GAU8 and see if I can get some good footage of that. I don't know how close they'll let me get. I'm fatter and I look
close. We got real close to that A10 Warthog.
Yeah, but I want to get in. I want to see if they'll let me press
Real
a button.
quick.
Get
Okay. You can be under a DVRO or domestic violence protection order, even though it's a temporary one, without it actually being as a result of a criminal offense.
all right, but that's probably going to be something that they're going to wind up.
Okay. It is a temporary one requires that at some point both parties actually appear in court before it is actually changed over to being a full protection order.
I know people who've had a temporary restraining order put on them by the person who lives with them, and they still lived with them.
Yeah.
And they violated their own order.
Yeah.
So they could go get a little nookie on the side and then try to have somebody else locked up. There's too much gray in the water right there for this.
But if you are under a protection order, you are not allowed to own a firearm. And that's what's being challenged at the Supreme Court right now.
Yeah, well,
and it should be. It should be. I think there should be a test.
Yeah, you can't deny somebody that you cannot deny. So it looks, if somebody's not in jail,
I honestly don't think that due process is satisfied even with the second hearing. Okay, because even at that second hearing, it is a matter of who the judge believes more. There really isn't a preponderance of evidence.
And this is why we need a very strict definition. There should be a test so that we can get a strict understanding and take out and really remove a lot of the subjectivity to it.
Okay.
And say these are the.
I agree that domestic violence is a huge problem in this country.
Not a question.
Do not deny that in any stretch of the imagination. But I also think that domestic violence protective orders are rampantly abused in this country too.
Right. They both are, which is why this is probably going to wind up getting kicked back. And they're going to have to say, listen, this is much, much too broad a set of circumstances for us to be able to interpret all of them, because we would now be legislating. You would have to write legislation to
which is why that rule and law should be overturned.
Right. So it's going to.
But it's looking like the Supreme Court's going to uphold it.
I don't know.
That would be disappointing. But I'd have to read what they're.
I don't know when you got courts across the country finding red flag laws unconstitutional,
because
this is in the same vein as that.
Yes.
You're talking about something that has not come to its conclusion. To have a broad base to strip somebody's rights away from somebody, is too far a stretch for this court.
I totally agree.
Yeah. All right, listen, I'm getting out of here. I love you guys. Jan, love you too. You guys be safe, shoot straight. Please plug the coffee, plug your shows, plug the thing in, shut the lights off when you leave. I'm out of here.
Yeah, that's all.
Good night, Frank.
Good night, kids. Frank. Love you guys.
I got to check out too, guys.
Yeah, same. It's that time.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this edition out of this week's live stream. Thank you, everybody who's joined us, both in the chat and just watching. We do appreciate you. Honestly, that's how we get the word out, is through you guys. Please do us a favor, like, share, subscribe. Okay, help us get the message out there. We can only reach so far. It's with you that we are able to extend that reach. That being said, our membership drive is in full swing. And yeah, I'm going to do a shameless, pointless plug. Self promotion.
Oh, yeah. Hey, speaking of that, when are you going to be sending out the emails for the renewals?
I'll have to look into that. Probably it should be getting close. I have to look into that and see when exactly we started that. But it should be here soon. So, like I said, we are in full swing of our membership drive. Guys, what we are doing costs us money. And pretty much everything that we've done up to this point has been out of pocket. Thanks to a few people that have joined, that has helped us out some with defraying some of our costs. But it's still not enough. And as I've alluded to, we've got multiple cases that we would like to actually start in the court processes, but we don't have the financial resources to be able to actually pursue those cases. And that's where we need your help. Because if we get people to help us financially, then we can start filing these court cases and we can actually start taking back control of our country. And regrettably, I think about the only way we're going to be able to do that is through the courts. And that is a risky proposition. I understand that. I get that. But until the rest of the country actually starts waking up and realizes that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people requires the people to be involved, nothing's going to change. And the only way that we can actually affect that change is through the courts. So if you want to help spread our message, help us put together some cases and so forth, please become a member. We're not asking that much. It's $15 a year, and you're going to get exclusive content from that. You're going to get we are working on additional benefits, but again, being able to do that, we need a larger voice, and the larger our voice gets, the more we can actually give back to you and give back to our community. So that being said, we are here every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. I want to thank Michael. I want to thank Jan, Frank. Thank you guys for being here. Mm-hmm. And thank you all for watching.
I got one more thing to say.
Oh, wait a second.
Happy Veterans Day, you two.
What's that?
Happy Veterans Day.
Yeah. Happy Veterans
very much.
And to all the veterans that watch the program.
Yes, thank you all. We do appreciate anybody that's made that sacrifice to serve their country. We will see you all next week, 9 p.m. Eastern time, every Friday night.